Hey everybody, this is Ryan Lockett with another time-lapse painting video. This time I'm painting the two final citizen tokens for the Ancient World 2nd Edition. So you can see I've taken some of the old citizen tokens, and not really because I wanted to copy what I had done before, but almost just as like something to, for me it's easier to start painting if I have something to start with, even if I end up changing a lot. And so that's kind of one way I paint. I usually paint that way actually quite often. It's just easier to have something to kind of mold, because I've talked about this before. When I paint, it's really a lot more like molding clay than you would think. You know, I have two methods of painting. Like, one way I might start with a drawing, and then I'll fill in the color behind the drawing, and then I will paint on top of the drawing. This is a pretty common way that people paint, but I also like to do this where I just sort of mush around colors and paint until it becomes what I want. So that's what I did this time. But you can see here I've already painted over the top of that other guy, and given this guy, I thought, this would be cool, this gnarly beard here, because maybe it's because I wish I could grow a gnarly beard like that, but I can't, and so I paint people with gnarly beards. So there we go. And this guy he lives in the desert, and he's got. I decided to go with a red clothing here, and these people are I think the official name we ended up with was the Guardians, and their special ability is that they have one extra arrow at the start of the game, and they also have one extra army slot, so they could have up to 3 armies at once. And you can see on this guy, I've got to give him a weapon. I think a minute ago I was kind of messing around with that. You can see here I'm sort of messing around on the face, trying to get it to be what I want. I just recently made a new brush that's a little bit smoother, and it's a little bit more forgiving than some of my other harsher hard edge brushes. And so I've been having fun sort of experimenting with that and seeing how it works. So yeah. But I also wanted to talk today a little bit about some of my other design decisions with the Ancient World 2nd Edition. I know it's been really exciting to revisit this game. Oh, you can see here I'm trying to mess around with the eyes and some of the shadow and some of the hair, and yeah, it's difficult to paint. I don't often paint a lot of detail on like small characters, so sometimes I have a trouble sort of figuring out how to do the eyes, because if you straight up do eyes with like really bright whites in there, they end up looking really cartoonish. So you can see I'm sort of trying to figure it out. I'm keeping the eyes kind of darker, but putting a little bit of light in there. You can see the light reflecting off the eyes, and because that's really all you need at this size. Because right here, what you're seeing, this art is much bigger than it's going to be in the final game. I mean, that final token is, I think it's, an 1.5 inches or 2 inches or something like that. It's pretty small. So what I have liked about these new citizen tokens, though, I know I'm kind of switching subjects a lot here, but what I like about these new citizen tokens is I like that you can see the background, sort of where they live. And you can sort of see, and it matches the player board. So for me, it sort of tells a story about the people living in this world much better than the old tokens did, which didn't really, and all the player boards were the same. So I feel like, my goal with game design is always to make it as immersive as possible, to tell more of a story. And sometimes I don't want to tell that story with, I don't want to have to tell it all the time with text. You can tell it with mechanics or with art, or even tiny little details in the art, which is a fun thing to do. So yeah, let me talk about some of the design decisions that we made with the Ancient World 2nd Edition. So one of the things that I like about worker placement games is I like worker placement games where the action spaces change each round, so it makes for an interesting little puzzle each time you play. So that, there is some element of that in the ancient world. You have the different titans that you can defeat and the different buildings that come up each round, and you have different military cards that come up each round. So that makes for an interesting puzzle each time. But I wanted even more of that, and so that was one reason why we added Ambrosia, the new resource. So for those who don't know, the way it works is Ambrosia is placed on different actions on the board each round. If you go to that action space, you can collect the ambrosia there. So on some spaces, it might build up over time. So what this makes is another interesting thing that you have to decide where to go, because you might look at a space and say, oh my gosh, there's 3 ambrosia there. If I don't go there, Joe's going to go there and he's going to take it, but I really want to take this thing first. And I think it adds another level of depth to the decisions you're making with your citizens on the board. So I really like that, and they also add an element, the ambrosia, you can use it for all sorts of different actions. You can use it to feed your citizens or repair buildings. But with the new mechanics, it definitely feels really valuable, especially depending on which strategy you're going for. I think one new thing that we've added is that Titans attack players, and so you'll place a Titan on a player board. And there's an interesting dynamic where you can be like, well, I'm not going to fight Titans much this time. I'm going to focus on building. But you have to still deal with that Titan, but the only way to deal with it is to get enough ambrosia. So there's this constant pressure to make sure that you're planning just right so you can get enough ambrosia for future rounds, because if somebody else defeats your Titan, then you have to draw. Usually, you have to draw a harder Titan over time, and the harder Titans cost more ambrosia. So there's definitely a level of planning there, and I'm excited about that in the game. We've been having a lot of fun. Oh yeah, you can see. Let me talk a little more about this drawing here. So you can see I painted the guy, and so now I'm painting the woman. And, I kind of want them to look fairly similar, because you need to know which citizen it is. It doesn't, no matter what side it's on, male or female. So you can see I've decided, oh yeah, she's going to have the sword, and but she has a very similar costume to the guy. And this one was interesting. I mean, it's funny because you I don't know if you paid attention, but I painted the man, and then I just immediately started going painting over the top of him to sort of transform his painting into the female. And I don't always do that. It was kind of an interesting experiment, and I feel like I wander a little bit as I'm painting this. But in the end, I was pretty happy with where I ended up. And actually, you should look at the final image, because it's different than what I was painting here. I'd made a couple more changes after doing this video. I think I ended up putting her hair hanging down in front of her body a little bit, and I don't think I finished with that here. So yeah, you can see that there. Okay, so back to talking about the game design. Another thing that is a little bit different now is it seems like in the first edition, it's really hard to win the game if you focus a lot on building and you ignore Titans. I would say that's not quite true in the second edition. I think I would say it's really tough to win in the first edition if you ignore Titans completely. And in the second edition, I would say it's possible. I personally, when I play, I prefer to have a more of a hybrid strategy where I build a lot of buildings and buy a lot of cards and get my economy going, but I also attack a lot of Titans, and it's sort of a mixed thing. But you can really, we've stress test the game, and you can really push it from one side to the other. You can really focus on Titans and still be competitive. And you could build only 4 or 5 buildings and you could still win. Or I have seen the opposite, where you can focus on attacking. Oh no, I'm sorry. So yeah, you can focus on building and just defeat maybe only 1 or 2 or 3 Titans, because there are ways to sort of deal with the Titans, even though their pressure is there. And I think that's interesting. It's interesting to see how that works. But of course, as you play, it's always best to react to what your opponents are doing. There's definitely some tactical decision making there, as well as some strategic decision making. So you can say, okay, this time I'm really going to focus on buildings, but you have to be a little bit flexible in the game as things change or come up. So yeah, and I'm excited about these citizens. I think they've turned out well. They do this style of painting definitely takes longer than some other styles. Like each of these was probably 40 or 50 minutes, and which is, it's not huge, but there are other ways of painting where you can definitely shave that time down. But it's okay because I like the look that I end up with this style of painting and with this new brush. Well, let me say again, thank you everybody for watching and backing the game, and I hope you have a great day. Take care.